So moving on to the playoffs, unfortunately, the Yankees got kicked out in the wild card game. And for me, watching the Yankees lose to the Red Sox was about as gut wrenching as possible as a Yankee fan. The Yankees had just swept them in Fenway 10 days prior. I was really confident about the game. But how was it in the dugout and the locker room after a loss as substantial as that one against your bitter rival?
Yeah, I mean, our season ended that night. I remember us being in the bullpen because I was in the bullpen that night just in case something weird happened, and we were all quiet back there, and once the later innings came on, and I mean we were still hopeful, but when you're down those runs against a good team, it's hard to come back. Any team, really. And I remember going inside that locker room after the game, and everybody was just sitting at their locker, and everybody was quiet. Aaron Boone came out of his office, kind of gave us some words, and he was thanking us for the season that he had, and we fought adversity the whole year. I think it's not a secret; everybody knows that. Guys were hurt. We weren't playing to our level. We were pitching and not hitting, or we were hitting and not pitching. We were just everything wasn't clicking on all cylinders. We kind of had those those stretches where we won 15 games and then we lost 12. So it was hard. It was tough. It was tough for us to swallow that pill, and then everybody else, kind of like the captains of the team, like the guys that you always heard when they talk and you always listened, like the Garrett Coles and the Stanton and the Judge and Brett Gardner. We didn't know what his future would stand, and those guys obviously they know the game as good as anybody else, and to hear those guys talk in front of the locker room after a big loss, with the season ended, it was tough. It was tough to hear it, and it was tough to look up, and it was tough to look at them in the face and accept it. But it's something that you learn and you try and get better at, and just hope for next year it doesn't happen the same way.
And building off of that, how much did you learn in this past season being around those guys, playing for a team that went through a roller coaster and finished strong and then comes up short? The combination of that experience on top of your performance, I feel like you probably learned more in that year, in that half a year really, than maybe several years prior to that. What did you take away from that, and how do you apply that into 2022 as we get ready for this next season?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be in the dugout for the second half of the season because I was a starter, and to listen to those guys, like the pitchers. Obviously JMO has done it a long time. Jordan Montgomery has been really solid for us. Garrett Cole obviously is Garrett Cole.
Yeah, he's pretty good. Yeah, he's all right.
and you had guys like Michael King, Domingo Herman, these guys that we were just talking in the dugout about, through the game, watching the game, we'll be like, hey, what do you got in this pitch? What do you think is coming now? And I would throw this, I would throw that, and why? And hey, why would you do this? And hey, why would you do that? So we asked a lot of questions amongst ourselves. And it made me realize, there's other ways to do it. There's not one way to get outs and not one way to pitch in the big leagues. And it was super cool. It was super cool to just be there and talk to those guys day in and day out and compete with those guys, because even like the hitters, the hitters will come in and you see them, fighting for their lives out there in the box. They're strike by strike, ball by ball, they're competing, and you see it in them where they're down 0-2 on the count and somehow they come back 3-2 and they win the at bat. It's huge to see that, because you're also rooting on for your hitters, and hitters like to see the pitchers inside the dugout, rooting for them and being there for them. So I thought it was a really cool experience to be in the dugout, and I learned a lot in that form where where there's so many avenues, that you can go through to win a game or to get better. And it was just awesome. And hopefully next year, I make the team and I'm there again and we're fighting, for another championship season.
And there are so many leaders in that Yankee clubhouse. I mean, we talked about Brett Gardner. Hopefully he comes back, but you go down the line, Aaron Judge, Garrett Cole, like they're just they're just guys in this locker room. Who of them do you feel like you're picking the brain most? Like which pitcher or maybe even a hitter are you going up to more often than others? And not to say that you wouldn't go, but just the guy that you feel like you're always bouncing things off.
Well, I was lucky enough to be with Brett Gardner in the dugout. And he is it was like a chess game with him. And every time he played and every time he got on a bat, you can feel and you can see when he battled through the at bat. And it was incredible to see. He's one of the most players I respect, because Brett Gardner, he's gonna be the fourth outfielder this year and ends up playing 140 games, or somebody gets hurt and he ends up playing 130, uncalled for. You know what I mean? So being with him in the dugout and asking him questions and him, he would go up to me and be like, "Hey, do you think that was right?" And I go, "I don't know. You tell me." Yeah, he's like, he would go. He would take me through the process, and it was super fun to hear him, to know his point of view of the game. It was super cool.
That is awesome. I mean, that's a guy that's been around, that's played with not only the big stars you talk about on the team now, but he's played with some dudes through the last decade.
And he has a ring
on the roster with a ring. Yeah, he's the only guy on the roster with a ring, or at least
exactly. So
going off of that, I mean, what's it like to play for such a historical franchise? I mean, I know any of us, anybody, and I know you'll say the same thing, right? Like playing for any major league team is incredible, no matter who it is. But the Yankees are the freaking Yankees. And I'm only going to say this when a Yankee is on the podcast. Peter,
thank you, Arm. I appreciate you.
Yeah, don't get used to it. It took a Yankee being on the podcast for me to say it, but it's the freaking Yankees. Do you feel that when you wear the pinstripes? Like, is there just a different like aura there compared to wearing another uniform?
100%. They're so big on, tradition, and they're so big on, who has walked these halls and who has sat in this chair that you're sitting at. And it's cool. It's cool to know and to try at least, to be half of what those guys were. You know what I mean? It's crazy to think that, 22 years ago, I was watching CC as a, 8-year-old or 9-year-old pitch for the Cleveland Indians. And then I was in 2019 sitting, in the same locker room as him. So it's incredible. And from a pitching standpoint, when you got 2 strikes on a hitter, the whole stadium will stand up and start clapping. And if you got that strike 3, everybody's roaring, and it's an incredible feeling. You don't hear anything during the pitch, but once that pitch is over and you have, that positive outcome, it's a feeling that's it's unexplainable.